There was a thread on Reddit where someone asked for people to explain he called it the logistics of their decks in a video, which I think is a pretty cool idea. And I am going to discuss my Engineering the Future hybrid deck. I'm saying mine, which is not exactly fair. The archetype has been there for a while. I've been toying with it since Caprice Nisei was released. And the current list is based on work by Weston Odom and by Thomas Robertson, although I tweaked it a bit. And an Engineering the Future hybrid deck, or EtF hybrid, um, essentially uses Biotic Labor to get out 3-2 agendas, and also sets up a remote to just slow advance agendas, either 5-3s or 3-2s, the usual way. And the reason this archetype is powerful is that going pure fast advance is very expensive, especially now when you have to accommodate Clot and play Cyberdecks. While on the other hand, playing Glacier is a bit risky, especially as far as your end game is concerned, since you cannot guarantee the remote, even with Caprice Nisei. So hybrid gives you this mix where, depending on the timing and on the windows that the runner gives you, you can either fast advance or slow advance agendas. So we're gonna play Engineering the Future, aka Ending the Fun, which is probably the strongest or second strongest identity in the game, just because it gives you so much money. EtF can easily give you 15 credits in a game. And let's build our deck. First of all, Jackson Howard. Every corporate deck should have 3 Jackson Howard. We could have a discussion about this, but it would be a waste of time. Just have 3 Jackson Howards in the deck. Seriously, there is no reason not to have 3 Jackson Howards in your deck. Just having Jackson and playing it correctly gives you, like, ups your win percentage by 10-15%. And we can see this by looking at records before opening moves and after opening moves. Jackson Howard is just good for Corp. Yeah, and playing Corp without it. Any of you who drafted recently can say how difficult it is to play Corp without Jackson Howard. Next, we need to decide on an agenda mix. And since we want to fast advance, and since we want to slow advance, and since we want to never advance, which is just put a card down and it's either an asset or an agenda, and your opponent can either check it or let you have it, we're going to use 3 2s. So Accelerated Beta Test and Project Vitruvius, 3 of each. 3 2s are currently the most efficient agendas available. You're paying 7 resources for 2 cards. They're even more efficient than 5 3s. We know that there is a Jinteki 4-3 in Moonbad, but that one is probably going to have a disadvantage. So 3 2s, so good, very advantageous. ABT has a nice ability with Jackson, and every once in a while you might over-advance with Vitruvius. So we have 12 agenda points, we need 8 more, and one of the reasons I feel that I didn't like this deck archetype until recently is because you would either go for NAPDs, so you would either play 3 NAPDs and 2 Chronos projects, or you would play some mix of 3-pointers, like, let's say, a Trirec and a Shard and whatever. Now, having 3-pointers in your deck is a headache because the runner pummels R&D and gets them, and then you cry, while scoring NAPDs is quite underwhelming. It's a good self-defending agenda, but 4 2s are highly inefficient as far as getting points is concerned. Fortunately, D&D has a new toy for us, and we're going to play 3 copies of Global Foodie Initiative. Totally worth the 3 influence on this little gem. Global Food Initiative is 3 points when you score it, but only 2 when the runner scores it, which means that you can win with 3 agendas, but the runner has to get 4 in order to win. They have to steal 4 agendas to win the game. Food Initiative has another nice bonus that you can install Advance It and then Biotic it out, and some players still don't see that interaction, which leads us to the next component of the deck, which is Biotic Labor. We're going to have 2 copies. This is our Fast Advance engine, and we're not going to use more than, we're not going to use more than 1 or 2. You can Jackson them back, because we do want to slow advance or never advance a bit, but having to solve that endgame situation, which I described earlier. We're still playing a Glacier deck, in a way, a hybrid. So we're going to have Ash, which is great for blocking runs, and wonderful versus Valencia Estevas. And we're going to have 2 copies of Caprice Nisei, because Caprice lets you take credits out of consideration. It acts as a multiplier. If a server costs, let's say, 6 credits to break, with Caprice it might cost 6, might cost 12, might cost 18. The math surrounding her is quite complicated and for the runner, and oftentimes a runner would just not risk running the remote with Caprice. They might run it once to force it to rest the ice, but she's a great way to force out agendas or defend HQ versus account siphon, or defend R&D if you feel your remote is safe. And this covers the skeleton of our deck as far as scoring is concerned. We have some fast advance, we have some glacier elements, and we have an agenda mix which we sort of trust. One last addition, we're going to put 2 archive memories, and these can be used either to get your Caprice back or your Biotic Labor back, or get ice versus noise, and so on. Let's talk about economy. So, some easy stuff, hedge fund and Adonis campaign, 2 very solid economy cards. In fact, if you're playing HB, it's quite possible that this is all you need. You're going to get your 15 credits from the ability, you're going to get 3 from Adonis and 3 from hedge fund, and you're in a really good spot. But since we want to fast advance, and since fast advance is so expensive, also we're going to want to support some expensive pieces of ice. We're going to put some more economy in, and this is going to take the form of ETF campaign, which is a nice strip similar to Adonis, less vulnerable to trashes, but be aware of Imp and of Wizard. And in addition, we're going to add this little gem, Breaker Bay Grid. So Breaker Bay, I don't know how aware people are of this upgrade. Reduces the res cost of cards in this server. Think about it as a trashable hedge fund that has the potential of providing a much higher benefit. So if they let your Adonis, so first of all, getting an Adonis off of Breaker Bay is a hedge fund efficiency move. If they let that tick off and you res some other asset, then you already gained quite a lot of money. If you use that same money to res an Ash or a Caprice, then again, even more money has been gained. Let's move on to ice. So some choices with HB are pretty easy. Eli, probably one of the most efficient pieces of ice in the game. 3 credits for a 2 sub 4 strength. Lady is really popular right now, so it's going to cost him just a credit and a counter to get through Eli, but putting Lady on the board is 4 credits, and eventually they're going to run out. Especially because we're going to add a wall of static, which is, one too many, which is more of a solid piece of ice. Initially I didn't like including it, mostly because from an economic perspective, comparing it to Eli, breaking Eli with Corroder is 4 credits, breaking wall of static is 2, but that absolute end run is really necessary to defend especially in the early game, before they have breakers and they can just click through relay. In addition, we're going to include 2 copies of Heimdall 1.0. Generally, I'm not a fan of Heimdall, but since it eats 2 lady counters and 3 credits, and since it's pretty expensive to break with Corroder, we're going to use 2 copies. With that said, watch out. If your R&D is a piece of ice plus Heimdall, and they have medium, for example, they are going to click the Heimdall and just break the ice and see and start accumulating their medium. Next, Turing. I used to play no copies, then 1 copy, and 3 copies seems to be like the right choice. It's perfect for defending an early game Adonis or an early game Eve. 2 Turings and a remote are pretty solid, unless your opponent has something like Gordian Blade. And AIs are a central component of the metagame right now. So Faust is gaining in popularity, Atman is there, and some people play Eater, especially out of Anarch cheese decks with a Count Siphon. Putting a Turing on HQ slows them down quite a lot. So 4 credits for a 5-strength code gate is a great deal right now. We're still playing HB, so 3 copies of Architect. And Architect just forces the Mimic. You're playing HB, they're probably going to try and get a Mimic before running your servers. If they don't, you can punish them with an Architect. It's the equivalent of 2 clicks. It can get back a Caprice Nisei or an Adonis, and you'd be surprised how often it triggers. I was actually pretty baffled that players face check HB so often, but yeah, so it's a good piece of ice to have. And let's put some Ichis in there. They cost a Data Sucker token if you break them with Mimic, and it's just an efficient piece of ice. 5 credits for 3 subroutines, and it slows down the runner quite a bit. So we have 15 pieces of ice. Let's put some more. First of all, I'm going to put a toll booth, just because it's such an expensive piece of ice to get through. FEM has become much less popular recently, and the way people get through toll booths is either paying a lot of money and a data sucker token with Atman, or yogging it with 2 data sucker tokens. I guess maybe Cyber Cipher out of prepaid Kate, or best case scenario, they're gonna David it and pay a token and 3 credits. All of these are good alternatives for you. So toll booth is a good inclusion here. And we are going to include an assassin, which is a new piece of ice in Data and Destiny. It's a 5-strength, 7-cost sentry that has a pretty fat net damage subroutine and a trash subroutine. Now, both of these have trace, but the trace is generous, trace 5 and trace 4. So if they face check this out of Kate, they're still going to have to pay 7 credits to elude your traces, which is a hefty cost to pay. If they want to break it with their sucker tokens, it's 2 tokens and 2 credits out of Mimic. And it seems to me that people solve this by getting a Strength 5 Atman right now, which is actually pretty great for you because it's quite inexpensive to put that on the table, and it's not that efficient against any other piece of ice. Remember that Turing cannot be broken by Atman. Oh, one last thing. People think that slapping down the Mimic provides them with safety for face checking because of the Architect, but now that you have Assassin, they might still be in for a nasty surprise. So we end up with 47 cards, but 16 influence, which is a bit of a shame. I would not want to drop the toll booth, so we're going to replace Caprice Nisei with Marcus Betty, which has a nice interaction with Ichi, and more often than not would be used to just end a run on a remote to let you score. And we're going to add a cyberdex. Wrong cyberdex. We're going to add the good cyberdex. And yeah, we're going to add 2 copies of cyberdex trial, of cyberdex virus suite. And there are several reasons for this. One, you might still want to fast advance through a clot, and just seeding a cyberdex on the table lets you do that. In addition, it lets you wipe data suckers and parasites before the runner encounters the relevant piece of ice, and you could get surprise trashes out of Assassin and Ichi, or you could just end the run. For example, if they run last click and assume they're going to trash an E-line. Finally, medium is a really popular option for NARC right now. They're going to focus on R&D. They're going to use files to break into the remote, and they're just going to accumulate these medium counters super fast. Cyberdex both break it if they run R&D and see it, or you can just install it as an upgrade in R&D, let them see their 2-3 cards, but then they're going to access the cyberdex, they're going to wipe. And you know how long your window is before they're going to start seeing new cards. And you can use that window to recover, to try and score an agenda, win the game. This was the initial version of the deck, which I tried, and it worked reasonably well. There were a few things that I wanted to change. One, I didn't like the handle, and both of the other players from whom I copied this list shamelessly had 2 copies of handle, but I'm generally unhappy to res it. So let's take a handle out, and instead let's replace it with Assassin. Another Assassin, because Assassin is wonderful. After playing with it for about 5 or 6 games, it's amazing how often it fires. Players are completely unprepared. I don't know if it's because they're not used to Data and Destiny yet, or because it's just a big piece of ice for the price tag. 7 credits is reasonably priced. But Assassin is a great addition. It's going to slow them down. It's going to put fear in their hearts, which is what you want to do as the corp. Next, I'm actually dropping Archive Memories to just 1 copy. I oftentimes found myself drawing it, after 5 games, I found myself drawing it in the early game, and also based on my prior experience with Archive Memories, this is not a deck that requires 2 copies. 1 is enough to get your Caprice back, to get an Ash. Usually it's there for Biotic Labor. That's probably one of the most common targets. And instead, we're going to use enhanced logging protocols, and that's another idea from Western Autumn. First of all, it's a really great tool for slowing down the runner, and if they haven't set up their multi-access yet, enhanced logging protocol is going to discourage them from checking the centrals and might buy you time to score out of the remote. 2, noise with Wildside and pancakes. I don't even remember what pancakes is called. The card that gives you back a click after Wildside. Adjusted chronotype. So noise with Wildside is gaining in popularity, and before they get their pancakes, logging protocol just shuts down. He's running for a while. And in general, it's a good slow. It's a good break. It means that they can't click through handle as easily. They can't click through Ichi as easily. They just have to slow down until they steal an agenda. Finally, Employee Strike is coming in Data and Destiny. It's a 1 influence runner current that blanks your text box. That could cost you a lot of credits. So Enhanced Logging Protocol lets you chase that away. Next, after facing Faust quite a lot, including Out of Criminal and Shaper, and after having my R&D destroyed again and again By Anarchs, I decided to spice up the deck list a bit by removing Marcus Betty and his Cyberdecks and replacing them with a Junebug and a Snare. And this is a bit of a gimmick, I would say, because there is no damage follow-up in this deck. I'm not trying to kill the runner. The purpose of Junebug and Snare is to be speed bumps. And by the way, the reason you can play Junebug is because you have Global Food Initiative. So if you install Advance, they could legitimately suspect a GFI. So both of these serve to fight Faust. If they empty their hand on breaking your ice, they could end up flatlined. And if they don't, they just lost 3 cards that they cannot pitch to Faust. Also, versus Prepaid Kate and maybe even Max, you might get lucky with your pulls and hit something that they need. For example, if you hit the Levi, then you know that they have to keep the same old thing to get the Levi back. And finally, you can use these to never advance. Just put them in your remote, and especially around game point. And notice that game point for this deck is pretty quick. If you score in an early Global Food Initiative and then fast advance one of your 3/2s, you're at game point. So put these just to never advance. Force the runner to check your remote more often. So this is the current version of the deck, which I'm playing. It's quite solid. I would say that Global Food Initiative and Assassin really upgraded the game experience for me as far as this deck is concerned. Just the fact that you are safer, especially in the early game, and that you can still get a 5/3, which is not as crazily dangerous as Pyrrhec or Utopia Fragment or whatever. I hope you enjoyed this. I would love to hear any comments about the process of building the deck. And go, win. Thank you for listening.